Let's bring in American Islamic Forum for Democracy leader, and he's the author of The Battle for the Soul of Islam, Zuhdi Jasser. Welcome, Zuhdi. What do you make of these executive orders?
Well, they're long overdue, and he's following through on promises, Liz, of the campaign, as you showed. And the bottom line is it's about first security, and second, it should be about messaging, because the messaging, I hope, is that this is a pause. We're not just stopping immigration, we're pausing it. And the extreme vetting isn't really extreme. It's about vetting for those who share our values. I mean, there's nothing more American than prohibiting those who believe in theocracy, which is what our founding fathers did, from coming to this country. So if you believe in an Islamic State theocracy where Sharia should run the government, nothing about personal Sharia, but governmental Sharia, then go to another country. It's amazing. It's amazing that now all the exaggerated hyperbole about fear around the planet that's going to happen, radical terror attacks that'll happen now, why don't they go to Saudi Arabia? When Saudi Arabia has zero going into their country, there weren't attacks that happened then. No, they should go to countries that share those values if they're Islamists, and after the pause ends, then start coming back here if they share our values, once the vetting begins to become more reasonable.
You mentioned it was far overdue. I mean, Zuhdi, the president, in defending extreme vetting, he says the FBI, points out again that the FBI has more than 900 active investigations of terror cells here. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's just using the compass of terrorism and violence. What if we started to actually narrow it than just simply violence to more focused on Sharia statism, Islamism, looking at the conveyor belt of ideologies? It would actually make their job easier and allow us to engage Muslims in that solution. That's what's not been happening, and we haven't had a solution because we've simply been countering violent extremism instead of countering violent Islamism, which this will begin the process. And I hope, Liz, he also begins to talk publicly about the need to engage his Commission on Radical Islam. That'll help talk publicly about what this vetting would be.
You know, Zuhdi, you pointed out Sharia law. It looks like the questionnaires, and they're going to look at social media count of these applicants for refugee or immigrant status. They're going to ask if they agree with Sharia law. You pointed out that the president noted that he does want safe spaces for refugees to stay in their area of origin. I mean, is that doable? Obama didn't do it because he said it would take tens of thousands of military forces to defend these safe spaces. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I'm glad he's talking about that, because that was one of the criticisms of the conversation in the campaign, was that if you really want to solve this problem and stem the millions from leaving, is you have to give them room to stay in a humanitarian way they want to stay, which is at home in Syria. So you can't solve the ISIS problem without also seeing the end of the Assad regime. My family can tell you that in Aleppo and Damascus, this is a revolution. And I don't know how he's going to do that. It'll be interesting to see what comes of the conversation with Putin this weekend, because Russia is intimately involved in propping up Assad. How are we going to create safe spaces in Syria without also then changing the mission from Russia and Assad, which is to decimate the moderates rather than truly attack ISIS? You know,
Zuhdi, it's tough because the Orlando shooter, he was a citizen. I mean, his family came from Afghanistan, and I think the San Bernardino, the guy who did that shooting, he was a citizen. The wife came in on a fiance visa. I mean, you can see how the job is so tough. Even though the 9/11 attackers came in on student visas. I hear what you're saying, Zuhdi.
Yeah, I mean, this is a global jihadist movement, and that's why Somalia, Yemen, Libya are all really important. And I don't know why they're not going to really, if you're going to pause, you pause all of them and then unpause them at 6 months to say that Syria is indefinite. All of those countries are going to be sources of radical Islamists.
Okay, Zuhdi, I want to switch gears. Let's go to the issue with Mexico. Right after President Trump and Mexican President Peña Nieto held a one-hour phone call, they both agreed to work on the fight over the border wall and trade. Now, Mexican billionaire tycoon Carlos Slim, he's now speaking favorably about President Trump. He's saying the president is a great negotiator and that his policies could create thousands of jobs in the United States. It's sort of like the blue-collar billionaire makes good, according to Carlos Slim. But remember this. Carlos Slim is also the majority owner of the New York Times, which has been critical of Trump. Now, Zuhdi, what do you think of this 180 from Carlos Slim?
Well, I think we're seeing what happens when you get a non-politician into the White House that that is close to the global business community, that different things will happen, different partnerships will evolve, and that the old establishment, be it the President of Mexico and others that are used to sort of getting things their way, will have to deal with the business community. So I think it's fascinating to see this evolve, and I'm sort of sitting at the edge of my chair to see how maybe we'll see the wall come up with economics that are not all coming from the American taxpayer.
You know, it's tough, Zuhdi. You don't want to collapse state on the southern border because China could step in, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is all interconnected. And, you know, we have to tread lightly. I think the strong talk is important from the White House, but also we have seen him temper some of his language. And this is a partner in the North Atlantic here, and we don't want to exacerbate the relationship. So hopefully we'll move forward slowly and carefully. There's a lot of threats: China, radical Islamist threats, and others in the region.
Thank you, Zuhdi Jasser. Always terrific. Please come back soon. We love having you on.